It is a surprise. Jared, Yates, Sexton, surprise, surprise. Here we are. Great to see you. Thank you for joining me here in mid-June.
Yeah, how's it going, my man? Wearing a hoodie. What's going on out there?
I got this. I went shopping at Costco. And I wasn't planning on getting clothes, but I bought a hat, some flip-flops, and these hoodies.
I mean, this is how every good political live stream starts. I went to Costco, did what I had to do.
Do you grocery shop?
Yeah. I buy my food at a market.
You go to a market and you buy all your food, and then
I go to a market. I decide what I'm going to have for dinner. I cook it. I prepare it. I eat it. Digest it. Move on.
You go to the market for each meal?
No, that would be insane.
Yeah, I thought that's what you're saying.
You prep. You decide what you're going to do. That's how you do it.
You think a lot about what you're going to eat?
No, not really. I like to cook. Yeah. But I'm autistic. I have OCD. I eat basically the same thing every day outside of dinner.
You're autistic?
I'm autistic. Yeah. Are you shocked?
Yeah, you don't seem autistic for whatever that means.
Hell of a mask. Had to figure it out very, very early.
Huh. How do you get diagnosed as autistic?
First of all, you don't get diagnosed because Robert F. Kennedy is putting you on a database, and God knows that they're preparing concentration camps for people. But yeah, I had to learn how to mask. Here I am doing my thing. Just figured it out, I don't know, a few months ago. Makes sense. Squares a lot of circles. Here we are.
So you self-diagnosed, reading symptoms and behaviors. You're like, yeah, that's me.
When you know. I'll just put it that way. It finally solves some mysteries that had been lingering for a while.
Do you have a memory? Do you have a great memory that you can remember a lot of things in general? Is that one of the?
Well, I went through a lot of trauma as a child, so my memory is a little bit weird. But I can do things like speed read, photographic memory of reading, things like that. Yeah.
Have you grappled with the trauma of your childhood head on? But I wonder. That's what brought you here.
Yes. I've spent years in trauma specific therapy. I feel like I'm on with Jiminy Glick. This is great. I love it.
Now, Jerry, you say that you had trauma. Is that right? What happened to you?
What happened to you? Are you sad?
I don't like the word trauma because I feel like there's so many different varying degrees. Everything is on a spectrum. And I feel like if you're using it, I can't use it because your trauma was real.
That's not how it works. And we got to be kinder to ourselves. We all go through things in this wild tilt-a-whirl we call life. We can't compare with each other.
Tilt-a-whirl. Yeah, I agree. But still, I want words that help define adjectives attached to trauma. I always think when I think trauma, I think verbal and sexual or physical abuse, on a regular basis. But it also could mean one time you were attacked or sexually assaulted or raped. Or in my case, 9/11 was trauma, but it wasn't one moment. It was the days and weeks after, and just being conditioned to certain scents and certain sounds and stuff. But it doesn't animate me every day or something that I need to cope with. That's what I mean by defining.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a whole spectrum is the right word. I mean, it can be everything from actual what you just defined, which is intense sort of stuff, which is what I went through as a kid, or it can be accidents that have happened, injuries that have happened, or even just not getting the attention and affection you deserved, or the care that you deserved, or whatever it is. There's a whole giant spectrum of it. And I will say that one of the defining characteristics of what we're going through right now is who has actually dealt with their shit and who hasn't. And I think that's the underpinning of a lot of what we're dealing with culturally and politically at this point.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit. Let's do a little bit more psychoanalysis because, we're all talking about it in our own way. And I have different ways of talking about it. You made it to Tuesday. I think I opened the show with, or every day's email. We're here, we're alive, let's go. But that what's this day going to be like? This roller coaster of a day. If you are paying attention to the news and to politics, then you may have some real ups and downs today. And how are you going to deal with them? And it sounds like what you're saying is we deal with life and the news and the events in ways that are affected by our past. Like we deal better or worse based on how we've dealt with our baseline and the issues that we're generally dealing with. I'm not doing a very good job of it. You take it over.
No, I think you actually nailed it. I mean, I think the thing that gets undiagnosed in all of this and under discussed in all of it is that this isn't just a political crisis. It's also a mental health crisis. Like, you don't get cults of personality and authoritarian cults without people being like in a really bad space. I mean, like, people don't connect the dots. Like, look at what's happening in this country. And what do we keep seeing, Pete? We keep seeing these polls that America is lonelier than it's ever been, more anxious than it's ever been,
Yeah.
more depressed than it's ever been. And when you take a look at that and you look throughout history, there is a mental health component to this that always links up to fascist movements, democratic crises. And basically, at this point, all of us are like in a position where we either deal with our shit or we don't, but we are also being abused by people who have not taken care of their shit. And if you study the right-wing authoritarian mindset whatsoever and the psychology underneath it, it's a bunch of self-loathing, miserable people who project their own self-loathing and their own misery on others, and it turns into a cycle, and it makes things worse. So basically, politically, we have now seen the scaling up of like family systems up onto a national place. And those of us who grew up with this and dealt with malignant narcissists and abusers, the moment that that man came down the golden escalator, we all knew exactly what this thing was. And we all recognized it immediately. And so it needs understood that we are both fighting a political battle, but we're also fighting personal battles, social battles, relational battles, and all of that sort of comes together.
You know, that's a pretty good general analysis, psychoanalysis of the MAGA movement.
Yep.
The self-loathing and miserable and jealous and angry and bitter. But, you know, you can be a progressive, liberal-minded person and have all of those emotions as well. So what's the difference? You know, is it how we act out? And like why it's what you look for for security or for leadership, or it sounds like what we hear a lot is for blame. Like if I'm stuck in a situation in life with my job, with my marriage, with my health, with my finances, there's a number of choices I can make or things I can think. If anybody was ever showed me them, I don't think we all have the same choices or opportunities, obviously, but it seems like on the right, a lot of times they want to blame all that self-loathing on somebody else or some group or some entity. But I mean, I'll blame some of mine on what we're seeing play out in the country too.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to right-wing people, the research that I've done is that they grew up in particularly like very, very specific situations, whether or not it was an authoritarian family, an authoritarian church, an authoritarian community or culture. And those things sort of inform it. And basically what they're taught at a very young age is to hate something within themselves. Maybe they're gay, maybe they're sensitive, maybe they aren't like, you know, maybe their goals aren't aligned with what they are supposed to be. And as a result, they kill that part of themselves or they repress that part of themselves. And then they go out in the world and try and destroy it. And they turn it into something evil. And what you just brought up, even in progressive, leftist, liberal, all these other circles, Pete, we see authoritarianism not just in politics. We see it in the workplace. We see it in relationships. We see it in communities. And it just finds its sort of release in these interactions, whether or not it's like siding with the boss against somebody that you care about, mistreating a partner, or doing these things unconsciously. We're all sort of living this life where we have to decide if we have agency or if we're aware of what we're doing. And a lot of these people, and Donald Trump and the people around him, MAGA, fascism, you name it, they're essentially on a bender. They essentially have an enabler in Donald Trump and other authoritarians who tell people, and this is, I think, the main appeal of MAGA for a lot of people, it's the freedom of unfreedom. It's not having to make choices. It's not having to be self-introspective. It's basically telling people, no, you are right. Everyone else is wrong. Think less about who you are.
It's what we would want government to be for us is also what I'm hearing to a certain extent, like the freedom to not have to make choices about testing my water or putting up my own stop sign or hiring teachers and teaching my kids, like all of the functions of government. I want to trust are good and safe and well-intentioned. But for generations in America, Americans have been told government is the problem. So Trump comes in like many authoritarians and says, I alone can do it. I'll take care of you. He becomes this father figure, and they trust him more than all of the rest of the government bureaucrats and leaders ever before, who are all corrupt. Somehow he's going to take care of it for us. We all would like that in our lives, but you only allow for it and you only depend on people and entities when you trust in them and when you believe in them and when you know that you can.
Well, and what you're talking about is the difference between trust and unearned trust. And it really helps to look through the lens of, like, the die was rolled the moment that they started calling him daddy. Daddy's home and he's pissed, right? Like, because that is the essence of it. They want to be children. And we all might remember that when we were kids, maybe we looked at our parents and we thought they were perfect, that we thought they were godlike, they couldn't make mistakes. And by the way, people like me who grew up in the environment that I had, I never thought that. That's one of the reasons why I've been able to be very hyper vigilant about what's been going on for the past 10 years. But a lot of Americans are in a place of arrested development. They look at him as an infallible father figure. And there is another gradient of this, Pete, which is we spent way too long being like, we don't need to worry about politics. The professionals have it. And this is something that's not just pertinent to MAGA and the right wing. Like, you have to be suspicious of every politician. Every politician has to earn your trust, and you have to judge them based on what they do, not just in the moment, but over a long period of time. And that's one of the reasons why democracy suffered, is because the administrative state, which started in the early 20th century, told us, don't worry about this stuff. The experts have it. You don't have to pay attention to it. We'll go ahead and run this thing. And so as a result, we became complacent. And we became much more focused on earning and gaining and buying and status and you name it. And as that happens, democracy starts to wither away until someone looks for a father figure. And it just so happens that this one is an abusive asshole who isn't capable and surrounds himself with abusive, incapable assholes.
Well said. What about the idea, a different question now, a little bit different subject, but just, I'm a sucker for any MAGA person or Trump person saying, I was wrong. I got it wrong. He's bad. I don't support him anymore after this. I'm a sucker for it. And I'm also convinced that there's not a critical mass of former Trumpers or former MAGA people or people leaving the cult that makes enough of a difference. And then the next question always becomes, is there anything that he could do that would turn people away? The answer is yes. There are a lot of things that you could do to turn people away. But the second question is, well, how many? And so specifically, you may shit on this or push back on it, but I have always thought that right-wing media is so influential and wags the dog of Republican ideology. And it's not the case on the other hand. It's becoming more so, I think, to a certain extent, as progressive media starts to gain a foothold on online, independently especially. But in this case, when you hear Tucker Carlson yesterday, and then you hear Dave Smith, who's like become, I just can't even believe it because I knew him before anybody did as a comic, has become this very influential, one of the leaders of the libertarian American movement of our generation. Yesterday, Dave Smith said, I'm out. I no longer support Trump. And it was over the war in Iran. And also he's very anti-Israel, I think, So then getting involved. And then you hear Tucker Carlson saying, this is what happened to Bush. Iraq war ruined Bush, and this, I think, will ruin Trump. So my point is, I feel like one thing that breaks the feed for the MAGA a little bit is when the most influential voices in right-wing media start to pull away. Maybe they'll go back. Maybe it doesn't make a difference. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I think there are different sort of forms of this. When we talk about supporters, it depends on where they are in their lives and how it is that they view it, because the essence of what we're talking about right now is cognitive dissonance. It's the ability to hold two separate things in mind, and eventually the mind unconsciously goes towards the one that it already believed. When it comes to Tucker Carlson, Dave Smith, Alex Jones is having a moment like this. And listen, I watch and listen to way too much Alex Jones because it is just a Rosetta Stone of the
I
right
didn't know
wing.
what he's saying or what he's been doing, but yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, it all started with the breakup between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, which
Okay.
were his two daddies. And the entire point is that right wing authoritarianism is so chock full of contradictions that each moment that sort of occurs, it creates so much tension that some of this stuff is going to break. Tucker Carlson's bag, and this is the thing, there are different strains within MAGA. Tucker Carlson's entire fortune and livelihood is based on white nationalism and evangelicalism, Christian nationalism, and by the way, hatred of Jews. Right? They like sort of using those conspiracy theories. So this is the perfect type of thing to lead to Tucker Carlson saying, you know what, you've been listening to me, you've been watching to me. Speaking of market segmentation, I know exactly who it is that is watching me and wants to watch this stuff. I don't think it is a coincidence whatsoever that Vladimir Putin, who Tucker Carlson is like completely enthralled to, and that's part of his whole like Christian nationalist thing. Vladimir Putin doesn't want this war to happen, particularly because he's allies with both Iran and Israel, that all of a sudden that all sort of drifts down. And so you are going to see all these different strains. We think about MAGA as this homogenized movement. It's not. There are like 6 or 7 different segmented movements that are within it that are constantly in conflict with each other. So we have to take advantage of those moments because there are people who can move away from this. Others are cultists and they're going to go down with this ship. But we, as opponents and adversaries, we have to take advantage of those moments of friction and torque.
Yeah, well, we're trying to, right? We're trying to take advantage of those moments, and it's hard because we're not all organized and we're not all on the same page. Although this past weekend was a pretty big deal, I think. It's hard to know what the numbers were, whether there were 1 million, 2 million, 5 million people, over 2,000 locations. A little bit easier to count how many rallies there were. What counts as a rally? Is it 5 people, thousands of people? I went to mine in Rockland County, and it was really amazing. A lot of solidarity. You see people out there. You realize you're not alone. That there are other people that, like you, care about people they don't know. I feel like that's the easiest way to put this modern ideology of those of us that are against what's happening. I care about people I don't know, specifically these immigrants right now. Who are unquote undocumented and working and doing important jobs. What do you make of the No Kings protest Saturday and the general resistance movement and where we're at here in mid-June? 10% of the way through Trump's 4 years, apparently, if he gets all 4.
I was incredibly inspired and emboldened by it. And I think these types of protests are incredibly important to go out and see you're not alone and you're not powerless. I mean, going out into my city, which is in a red state, and seeing, upwards of 10,000 people coming together for blocks and blocks and people honking and just chanting and taking care of each other, engaging in mutual aid, incredibly inspiring. I think this is a good sign, but we also can't let it like devolve into self-congratulation. The idea that simply because we had the largest one-day protest in the United States of America, the fact that that happened doesn't mean that the job is done. And I think people need to keep something in mind, which is this isn't going to be a movement that defeats MAGA until we're not just protesting against MAGA and Trump. We have an alternative to it. And so if you take a look at popular movements, revolutionary movements, which this has the potential to become, you have to start coagulating and creating an agenda. You have to start creating asks, which is, what is it that we want to accomplish? And it's not enough to just get Trump out of office. We have to move beyond Trump and move beyond the normal that came before him. I think the agenda and the platform is pretty obvious what it should be, but it's also going to take conversation. It's going to take bargaining. It's going to take collaboration, which is hard and messy. But I think over time, this will eventually come together if we keep doing this. But it was not, I wrote about this over in Dispatches from a Collapsing State. This has to be the beginning. It can't be the end. And unfortunately, in America, we have spent a lot of time congratulating ourselves about showing up like this, as opposed to saying, okay, this was a great jumping off point. And on top of that, Pete, there's a lot of danger right now in this country, and it's only going to grow. It's not going to be as easy as showing up on a Saturday. It's going to be an ongoing process, and we need to really steel ourselves against that.
Are you familiar? I wasn't. I'm just looking in the chat with the 3.5% rule.
Yeah. The idea is if 3.5% of the population fights against the regime, that the regime will fall. And I think that is a really catchy thing that shows up in memes a lot of the time, but I don't know that is necessarily going to be the truth. And on top of that, we have a hell of a situation on our hands here where we have a media that is owned by the wealth class that reported on this but didn't treat it the same way they did with the Tea Party. We have a Democratic quote unquote resistance party that doesn't really want to change all that much and doesn't really want to like align itself with this. So I do think that something like that holds water. But I think it's going to take conflict. It's going to take collective action. It's going to take general strikes and mass collective action. And that's going to take a while. The entrenched power that we're dealing with is very strong in this country.
No doubt about it. And we're seeing that play out all over the country, obviously. What do you make of what's happened in the streets of California last week? The introduction of National Guard for the first time since since segregation. And that the president overruled or sent the National Guard without a request the first time. That was a pretty big deal. And then first time the Marines are out there, and the Marines, by the way, like it's becoming a little bit easier. And I have credibility on issues around veterans, so I don't mind saying it. And I'm a comedian, but it's becoming a little bit easier to be critical of the military in the U.S. It used to be forbidden, but I mean, they sent the Marines out in LA, and the first guy they arrested was a veteran who was going to work, who wasn't breaking any rules, but stepped across the line. And it looked real bad. They looked real bad marching in that parade. They don't look prepared at all. They don't look intimidating. And to be fair, with all due respect, we have not won a military conflict in our lifetime or our parents' lifetime. Our parents, in Vietnam lost everywhere, lost in Iraq. We lose every major conflict that we have gotten in, no matter how good our technology, no matter how well trained and resourced. You can't beat an insurgency. And so neither can Israel in Iran, is my opinion. But what do you make of the military in the streets in LA, that order, and what it says about our current authoritarian movement?
Well, it's only going to grow. I mean, it's going to move to Chicago. It's going to move to New York City. I think it's time we face that there is a plan to go after political opposition in these cities. It's a cultural revolution situation.
I read yesterday 2 of 3 of the biggest, most undocumented people in America are in Florida and Texas, and they don't seem to be targeting the red states. They're targeting California, Illinois, so Chicago, LA, and New York.
Yeah, and it's not by accident. I mean, basically, there's been a deal that has been struck between Trump and the wealth class. He's not going to go after immigrants who are being exploited by the wealth class in order for cheap labor. In fact, this isn't about getting rid of all immigrants. It's about getting rid of as many immigrants as possible and creating a subclass of exploitable workers who aren't going to ask for more, and they'll do whatever that they're told to do. And Pete, this is an uncomfortable thing that I have to say. And I every time I have this conversation now, I apologize because, people are free to disagree with me. I understand if it makes people feel itchy. What I've learned about fascism is that when fascists show up in your town, you meet them in the streets and you let them know that they're not welcome. And that doesn't mean showing them signs. That doesn't mean, chanting a few things. I'm not worried about Waymos being set on fire. I'm not worried about rocks being thrown. I'm not worried about clashes with police. I think we are in a very, very volatile situation in which the monopolization of violence by the state is not in play anymore. I think the covenant between the people and the state has been broken, and I do think that we are heading towards something really, really ugly, and we need to reconsider how we look at this thing. And Los Angeles, Angelinos, I tip my hat to them. They are showing up the way that they need to show up. And they are taking care of their neighbors. They're taking care of their friends. They're taking care of their coworkers and loved ones and even strangers. And that's what we all have to do. We have a Gestapo in this country. And you can't just say, well, that would be bad if we had a conflict with them. If people who are unidentified, masked, and they don't have any warrants, if they're going to show up and do this, they're not law enforcement. They're Gestapo. And history tells us you do not allow that to happen. And I know that's uncomfortable and it's not territory most people want to head into, but I still think it's the truth.
I agree with that. And I think that's what we're seeing in California. It's just who's doing it? Who's going out there and confronting those people? It's not white progressives with great lives and kids. Why would you do that if you had a good life?
Well, and that's also a question here too, is that I think a lot of white moderates, white liberals, and white progressives are going to be faced with a pretty big choice at this point. The choice has been there for forever, but now it's time to actually make the choice, which is, are you willing to put your life and livelihood and privilege and comfort on the line? Because
No.
that's what authoritarianism asks of us. It gives us an unconscious question, which is, am I actually going to stand up for what I believe are my principles, or are my principles not real? And that is a question that a lot of white people are going to have to choose in the next few years.
I think your principles are real. You wish it were different, but you're not going to put your life on the line or make sacrifices to make it different.
Well, then I don't think they're principles. I think that those are slogans and things you say on social media in order to gain clout and attention.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying them on social media, if you're openly like advocating for something and not doing anything, yeah, you're not doing a great job. But
I would argue that we have a faux political conscience in this country, which tells us that we can meme our way out of it. We can subscribe to things that'll get our way out of it. We'll buy t-shirts, we'll buy mugs, we'll do all of those things. But when the rubber meets the road, are you actually going to fight an authoritarian regime? Because here's the thing, Pete, and I just want to put this out there and lay my cards on the table. Like, I've meant what I've said over the last 10 years. That's the thing. I wasn't just doing this in order to like gain social media followings. I wasn't doing this to sell books. I saw something coming. I saw that it was dangerous. I wasn't LARPing. I wasn't pretending. I know a lot of people were. And I know that they didn't consciously think that. But I think it's time for people to realize that we're actually in the shit. And you have to make decisions at that point. Are you pretending, or are they actual principles? And I think people have to make up their minds about that.
I think memes make more of a difference than you're giving them credit.
Oh, no, I don't disagree. There's a difference. Okay, let me be specific. And this is one of the reasons I love talking to you. No, you'll push back in the right places. So here's what I'll say. I think memes are incredible for communication purposes, and they sort of like hit a very specific region of the brain. I think there's a difference between memes that communicate things and memes that are catharsis, that give us like a quick chuckle or a release, and it takes away from the discomfort of the moment.
I think what you're saying, and this is what I've always tried to be as well, is the change that you want to see. And it was always, I think that while it was the right thing to do, it was also the smart thing to do in terms of branding. Like way back at my Sirius XM days, I remember, being an early, at the very beginning, I've always cared about the environment. And so back in 2009, I was talking with climate scientists like Michael Mann about climate change. And then came time to get a new car. And it was like 2010. I was like, I'm going to get a plug-in. I got a Chevy Volt. And then I got solar panels. And I got it not because I thought it was, making a difference in the environment. I got it because if I was talking on the microphone and saying that we should do these things, then I had to do those things. But we're not talking as much about our consumer and our consumption in those cases. Now we're talking about something different. We're talking about, you got to get out. You got to get out in the streets. You got to do more. I mean, not everybody can get out in the streets. There's all kinds of things that you can do to help organize, but you've got to do more than just buy the right thing or vote the right way or say the right thing.
You're talking about something that is intertwined that a lot of people don't understand, which is that under neoliberalism, which has been the consensus since the late 1970s, neoliberalism tells us that you vote with your dollars. Democracy isn't real. Mass politics isn't real. Basically, everything is going to stay the same for the status quo. Where you make your choices are the things that you buy. And the insidious thing that happened in the 1980s is that we were convinced that the purchases we made defined us as people. That was the most incredible thing about capitalism, is all of a sudden it's like you took the spirit of the 60s and 70s, that individualism, and then you go out and buy the products that say, this is who I am. It's the character that I play. And yes, you can do those. You can make decisions based on what you buy or what you don't buy, but it's whether or not that's a stand-in for your actual political operation and political life. And a lot of people in this country have confused that the purchases you make stand in for actual small d democratic action. And now all of a sudden we're in a place where you kind of have to walk and chew gum at the same time. And most people in this country aren't aware that that's even a thing, and they're not taught how to do it, which has put us at an incredible disadvantage.
Yes, well, I guess we have to learn how to do it, or teach others how to do it, or share ideas.
We gotta build this plane while we fly it.
I don't want to.
I don't either. Okay, can I say real fast? I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things that I've learned in therapy, Pete, is if I am in a situation that I don't want to be in, like, I don't know, there's an authoritarian coup in the country and we're having to deal with it, it's to say out loud in a frustrated voice, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't want this to happen.
Good.
And then radical acceptance comes in and you're like, well, fuck it. This is happening.
Oh, that's well done. That's some good stuff. That's some good philosophy or spirituality. And I'm
It's
glad I said it.
something.
It is. I think radical acceptance is a really important idea, notion for people to read and think about. But it is. That's the point. Is that I didn't want this. We were supposed to be in a different place. Once Obama got elected, I was really excited for my daughter's future, about where this country was going, and so it's just such a shock that we're here now, and everything that we're going to have to do probably for the rest of our lives to get back some sense of normalcy, or to beat back the authoritarian tendencies of a frighteningly large percentage of our friends and neighbors.
It's not the fight that we wanted, but it's the fight that we have.
I don't want it.
I don't want it either. I would much rather that we would have avoided this. And that's something that I've had so much grief
I
about.
want to fight for gay people to serve openly in the military. That was a good
Sure.
fight. I got into it. That
That's a
worked.
good
We
fight.
won. Gay marriage worked. We won.
Great fight.
Healthcare, we didn't get anything near what we deserve and need, but we got something, and we put some regulations.
But here's the good news. Everything that you just brought up shouldn't even be a controversy. Those things shouldn't even be a debate. That should be the moderate centrist position. And what we had before Trump was offensive. It was scraps. We were suffering indignities. We now have the chance, because the seal has been broken, to create something better, to have the world that we deserve. And yes, it sucks. And no, I don't want it either. But we have the opportunity to create the world that we deserve. And we can do it. Period.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think there's going to be a lot of tragedy. There's going to be a lot of suffering. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I think it's going to be a very, very awful period. And I think you and I and the people watching and listening are going to have to do a lot of things that we don't want to do. And we're going to suffer, and we're going to have setbacks, and we're going to have tragedies. But I think in the long run, we're going to win this thing. I think I mean, my God, we might have a world war before the end of the week. We don't even know at this point. There's going to be a lot of awfulness, but I think that we can win this thing. Yes.
I like to hear you saying that. I wonder what winning looks like. I wonder how long it takes. I wonder what.
Well,
can I just?
Pete, I'm not an evangelical, but there's something to learn about Moses in the wilderness. You know what I mean? Like the idea that you occasionally you may not get to see the promised land. You and I might not get to see the spoils of our victory, but we need to do it anyway in order to get to where we need to get. And will you? I hope to God that we will see it. And I hope that we will spend part of our lives in a better country and a better future. But the task, it doesn't change it. We still have to head in a direction.
How much are you thinking about writing or considering the midterm elections of 2026? It's like in a normal, even Trump's first term. I don't think we were concerned that if we lost, we would lose everything, and rightfully so. But I don't think that we were that concerned that they would be free and fair midterm elections in 2000. Is it 18? Yeah, the midterm elections, I believe. But these upcoming, so we had normal conversations about what Democrats should do, or about the political conversation, or about activism, or about voting, and obviously primaries and candidates and so on. But I feel like we can't really talk about the midterm elections in terms of why people are going to vote the way they're going to vote, and how to get them out to vote, and how to organize, because I'm really concerned about what they might do, what kind of games they might play around the midterm election. So how much are you even thinking about those elections for the House, especially, where I think if they pass this bill, it would be the worst thing they could do for their upcoming election.
I'll be honest with you. I don't think about the midterms even a little bit.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't take that for granted anymore. I think actually, you know what it reminds me of, Pete? It reminds me of being a kid in a dirt poor family and them not making good financial decisions and talking about when they're going to win the lottery. It's magical. It's magical thinking. I do not take the midterms or the 2028 election for granted. I that is not where my mind is at. It
Yeah.
is in the actual grassroots movement and organizing building. And what's more, Pete, like even if the Democrats were to win the House in 2026 as they're presently like constituted, it isn't going to make a difference. Like it actually isn't. Like something major has to change in order for something to move here. And it has to be the creation of a movement that asks more. There has to be an alternative to Trumpism. And there just isn't right now. So no, I don't think about the midterms whatsoever. It's magical thinking to think that they're going to be free and fair. If they are, my God, that would be a pleasant surprise. You found $20 in your pants that you haven't worn in a while. But no, I'm not taking that for granted.
What do you make of the assassination of these two Minnesota? Well, everybody knows what I'm talking about. The one assassination, the other assassination attempt. And I mean, this guy who did it, like, do we need much more reporting to determine that he was a Christian nationalist, that he believed what a lot of, they don't all believe the exact same shit, but this guy went to some serious religious schools. He did some serious preaching and activism around anti-abortion, anti-gay, came from a certain thread of Christianity that is bad. And he targeted, obviously, Democrats, supported Trump. Like, I feel like media is not talking about him the way that he should be talked about, which is usually the case with white Christian extremists. But we all know that if that guy was Muslim and not even religious, much less an actual religious fundamentalist who had done this, it would be a different story. And it's always the case. But this is crazy. And the chill that it puts on people who are serving currently, much less who might consider running, you know, I can't imagine the ripple effect. I couldn't blame anybody for deciding to not run or not run again.
Well, I mean, look at the people who are being targeted around this country. It's politicians, it's public figures, it's people who, you know, are scientists, experts, doctors, you name it. And I want to go ahead and call it what it is, which is that we have a domestic terrorism problem in this country that nobody wants to sit with, which is that we have right-wing extremists. And it's not just this assassination. It's not just people being mailed bombs who are in the media and politicians. It's every mass shooting where a manifesto comes out and talks about white replacement. It's every manifesto that comes out and talks about immigration. It's every manifesto that comes out and repeats these same ideas. We don't want to connect the dots because if we connected the dots, we would have to do something about it. And so this isn't the first time it's happening. It is a long-running, long-standing problem. It just so happens that now it's getting to the point where it's becoming much, much more regular. And it's the equivalent of like looking outside and seeing that there are wasps building a nest, and you're like, I'll take care of that in a couple of days. And a couple of days becomes a couple of weeks, a couple of years, 10 years, 20 years. And all of a sudden you walk outside and you're like, they are stinging everything that they can find. We have a problem that we haven't wanted to name, we haven't wanted to deal with, and we've been in denial about it because to actually accept what is happening would mean that you would have to stop it. And that, unfortunately, is what has led us to this moment.
Finally, just got to ask you about your piece at your Substack back at the end of May. Everybody should subscribe if they're not already. Jared Yates, Sexton.substack.com, dispatches from a collapsing state. You wrote a piece called "The Whole Dumb Joe Rogan Thing," which I really liked, and everybody should go read. But say just a little bit about it. I don't know exactly what question, but you basically, you know, say the Democratic Party, the progressive movement needs what?
Well, I mean, the Democratic Party actually, like, the problem isn't messaging. And if you listen to all of the lanyard class and the strategist and the communication experts, they really think that Americans are just stupid, and so they don't understand what's good for them. That's why they represent the professional managerial class. They're so much smarter and so much better than everybody else. Post 2024, what have they done? They've blamed the groups right? Which basically means people of color, gay and trans people, all of these groups fighting for better lives. And so they think that if they can just get a propagandist, which by the way doesn't even understand who Joe Rogan is. Joe Rogan gained popularity because he absolutely doesn't think about what he's saying before he says it, and he's not actually beholden to anybody. Like
Right.
he decides to endorse Trump and move away from Trump on a day-to-day basis. But the Democratic Party is interested in getting a propaganda tool. They have no idea how to talk to normal people. They have no idea how to talk to young men. They just spent over $20 million doing that. They just created the Abundance Movement, which is funded by the Walmart family and every other oligarch in this country. That's basically like, I know what'll get people. Deregulation. No, shut the fuck up. That's not what's going to get the Democratic Party in a better position. It's when the lanyard class and the strategist class, when they move to the side and actual normal people who want something and deserve something are able to start to determine the agenda. It's not the message. It's not the messenger. It's the fact that they don't have a plan. They don't have something to put forward. And that's why people reject them at this point.
All right. I said 30 minutes and I did 40 with you, and I appreciate you very much. I hope everybody goes and subscribes to your Substack and listens to the Muckrake podcast and supports you over there. It's been too long. I always say that, and then time passes, but we connect. We talked for a while before. It was like a warm blanket.
Oh, you're my warm blanket.
It's like a nice hug.
It's like a nice weighted blanket. I enjoy it. Thank you, my friend. Everybody stay safe. These are dangerous times.
Thank you, Jared. All right. Jared Yates Sexton. And you can punch out, buddy. And I'll just say good night to everybody.
All right,
good night.
pal.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Whatever time you're watching this.
Good luck.
Good luck. And George Clooney.
Later, bud.
Good night and good luck. There he goes. Hope you appreciated that. Sorry I haven't figured out quite how to promote these things and let you know, but it seems like people get a alert and which is good. So that's it. That's all I've got for you. It looks like Jared Yates Sexton. Very interesting. Good stuff. Thanks for stopping by. And I will talk to you guys. I'll talk to you later or anytime. Bye-bye. Take care of your mental health. Be good. Go hug a tree.